All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back. This is Expert Insights. My name is Edelio Sanchez, your host. I'm excited about it today because I have Will Butler from Magic Mortgage here with me.
Sir.
I'm excited about this one. We're going to get into it, man. How long have you been in mortgage?
Man, I've been in mortgage longer than I'd like to admit, but pretty much my entire adult life. I stumbled upon it at 20. I work for a big Fortune 500 company that most people are familiar with. I'm not going to say any names, but it ends with ACE.
Hey.
So it might sound familiar. So that was when I was 20 years old. I'm 33 now, so 13 going on 14 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a whole career. I mean,
Whole career and a half. Now, to be fair, I stepped away from mortgages for a few years.
Okay. What did you do for that time?
So in 2020, actually 2 weeks before COVID, I had this itch that was building up for a few years. And, I'm one of these people who, people have said to me before, like, oh, like you belong doing something. That people say, like, if you were like really spiritual, religious, like you should be a preacher, is what people have told me. And so I always felt there was some kind of calling for me to help and develop people, pour into people. And so I had this itch of coaching. So I left the industry for 2 years in 2020 during the two most profitable years in mortgages in the history of mortgages.
Yeah.
But I got no regrets. I was able to scratch that itch. I was able to serve people. And now I'm back.
I love it. I feel like people like you are rare, if I may say so myself, mostly because not only are you like a wealth of knowledge and you have the experience, but you also have that drive to connect with people, to be a helping hand and not just look at a number and say like, this is not going to work next. Right. Like I feel like that's kind of lost nowadays, especially after the pandemic, where so many people are looking to get to that next level, but they may have a couple extra hurdles that they didn't have before. People like you are the people that are actually helping and making it happen for them. So I'm grateful for you.
Appreciate that.
I'll say something too about our office, quoting the great Bobby Davidowitz. He says that we are a self-development company. We just happen to do real estate. And I love that because it's number one, just pour into yourself so that you can pour into other people. You reflect that very well. So I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to talk about some of the things that are happening and some of the things that you've been able to do to help people out. So let's get into one of the main things that I've been hearing about. If somebody wants to get into their first home, right? They're either a millennial or a Gen X or a boomer, but they've never bought a home. They want to get into a home. They look at the news. They look at the fear mongering that's going on around here. They look at, okay, interest rates are just everywhere. They're not where I want them to be. What are things that they can take away from this video? Tangible things that they can do so they can position themselves to be able to buy either this year or the beginning of next year.
Man, right now, and I believe this wholeheartedly, there are more products that are available than I've ever seen in my entire life. Because you have, Hometown Heroes is a very, very popular one that everybody knows about, everybody talks about. It's kind of the buzz. It's the it product right now.
Yeah.
So that's one, right? I'm actually doing a loan right now. Can I share a quick story about this product?
Absolutely. We love stories.
I actually have I picked up a client from a listing agent who is doing a deal, and their lender basically is on their fourth extension, and they couldn't get the deal done. And so she said, hey, well, can you just look at this deal, see if it's something that can get done? So talked to the client, looked over the application, and I realized a few things. So the first is the client thought she was going through down payment assistance. So they tried taking her through a 0% down conventional loan, which is also another pretty good product, but there are certain overlays you have to be aware of. Client didn't qualify for that.
Wow.
So the lender just continued pushing them through without that. And then now the client has to bring close to $18,000 to the table. Oof. Client doesn't really have the $18,000.
Right.
She does, but if she were to do it, she would liquidate all of what she has, which is not a part of her plan to purchase this home.
Yeah.
And the seller was paying 3% of the closing costs, which is roughly, let's just say $10,000 roughly, that was going to the buyer.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it and I was like, she's already getting 3% from the seller. If she had any kind of down payment assistance, virtually she could buy this home with little to no money out of pocket.
100%.
And so what we did in this situation, to make it make sense for the seller to give them more time, I said, look, this deal can absolutely get done. But here's how we have to structure it. We're going to take her hometown heroes. We're going to get her 5% towards her down payment and closing costs. Again, she's already getting 3% from the seller. So instead of the seller having to fork up 3%, instead of that, just say, hey, let's back out 2%. So it makes sense for the seller to give us an extension. So now the seller is making more money.
Yes.
Because they're saving an extra 2%. The buyer has to come to the table with, get this, on our last estimate, negative $6,700. Okay. Which basically means, like, when you're doing any kind of down payment assistance or anything like that, seller concessions, if there's an overage, they don't just get that money back. What happens is that money just disappears into the abyss.
Yeah.
So instead of it just like disappearing, we say, hey, let's back it out. So the seller wins. Use hometown heroes so the buyer wins. The buyer's cash to close is, at this point, as of today, is like negative $200.
That's crazy.
So she's going to close on this house with virtually no money out of pocket outside of the earnest money deposit. And it's a win-win for everybody.
She made money buying this house, essentially.
She made money, and that's the goal of real estate. is to make money.
That's the whole point. Yeah. I love that. I love that story, because not everybody's going to look at that situation of that person and then go, okay, what's the creative way that we can navigate this one so that we can actually make it happen? Not only make it happen, but make it happen in the fashion that you did, which is, it's great. It's great for everybody.
Yeah.
And for people that may not know, an extension on a contract means, like, we set parameters for how long this contract's going to be. If you ask for an extension, you're essentially asking the seller, hey, I know we said we wanted to close on this date, but there's unforeseen circumstances. Can we extend it to this other date? You extended it 4 times.
The other lender extended 4 times.
The other lender ran into so many issues that they extended it 4 times, virtually just probably pissing the hell out of this seller, just being like, what is going to happen here?
Yeah, which is the only reason I got the call in the first place.
Right.
He's like, hey, can this deal even be done, or should we just kill it?
Don't you love that when people call you just to save a deal?
I love it. I love it. I mean, honestly, probably 40% of my business comes from deals that are getting turned down from other lenders.
That's wild.
I mean, we did a deal the other day that was the client was denied because they went from 1099 to W-2.
Oof.
Think about how weird that is, because typically, and it was a W-2 salaried position,
right?
$130,000 a year salaried, no variance in pay, but went from 1099 to a guaranteed 130, and then their bank said, "Oh, we can't do it because you don't have enough history being W-2." We closed that deal in less than 2 weeks.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between the traditional lending institutions versus a broker like yourself. Like, what are some of the things that people can take away? Like, if they're looking to buy a house and they're going to their institution where they bank and they ask for a loan, and that's all they know is what that institution tells them, how can a mortgage broker differentiate themselves from those institutions? What are the benefits?
Well, the first way you could differentiate a broker from a direct lender is, first off, its cost. I would say so. Just in general, we did our own study, and we took all the loan estimates that we're receiving from direct lenders and compared it to what we had. On average, we saved clients $4,700 in closing costs. You know.
Yeah, we can put the graphic up as soon. Yeah, send it to me. I'll put it up.
Just even think as well, like, of from a consumer standpoint, if you're somebody who's looking to buy, would $4,700 make a difference in your ability to buy today, or maybe let's push this off maybe another year so we can save up a little bit more money?
Right.
So it's a huge difference. So that's the first thing. The second thing is not just cost, but can a deal get done? And I think this is probably the most important for people to realize is, when you work with a broker, you're working with more than one lender. Okay. When you go to a direct bank, let's say you go to a Chase Bank, a Bank of America, Wells Fargo, any of these big retail banks, you go there and you have to qualify for their guidelines. And so let's just say, in order to get a loan from Chase Bank, you have to be a square. But what if your criteria, you're not a square? Let's say you're a triangle. What if you're a circle? And you don't quite fit inside to that criteria? You're somebody who should be able to buy a home, but because you're not a square, they don't lend to you.
Yeah. And
so what a broker does is you shop it around with multiple different lenders, and you have lenders that do loans for squares, circles, triangles. It doesn't matter what it is that you are. So here's what I would say. If you're a consumer who's looking to buy, 100% always get a second opinion. Even if you're talking to a broker already, get a second opinion. because, just like in the real estate world, I mean, how many real estate agents are there in Central Florida alone?
Oh my God. I don't even know.
It's well over 10,000. I know that much. Last I saw was over 14,000. So it's well over 10,000 agents. Are all agents people?
Absolutely not. I mean, just in the last week, I've had conversations with some agents that I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you negotiate with them.
And you them every day.
And you could pretty much tell right away when you talk to an agent if they're competent or incompetent, right?
Yes.
And so always get a second opinion. Take a look and see what's around. If you're getting denied, and even the same deal that I told you about with Hometown Heroes, where we're giving her the 5%, we're going to the same exact lender.
Wow,
that's the crazy part. So it's a conventional deal. We can transfer the appraisal because it's with the same exact lender.
It's mind-boggling.
But I'm happy for it then.
Yes, I mean 100%. Like when it does get done, is great. But the mind-boggling part to me is that these deals are just being like they just slip through the cracks every single month. Like it just happens, and just people they're not connecting. Well, number one, with the right person, and number two, they're just not being informed enough. They're not having that conversation at the beginning where they can understand their path forward. That's one of the main things that I always deal with it whenever I talk to a client, like a first touch with a client, is let's get to know each other, but also let me get to know your story, like where you're coming from, what are the things that you're looking for, and then I can, out of my army of resources, I can start plugging in and taking things that I know you're going to need so that it is a seamless transaction.
That's so good, man. Or do you study John Maxwell by chance?
No.
Okay, you knew who John Maxwell is? Familiar with him? Oh man, so he's like the leadership godfather. Okay. So before him, there were only management books that were being written, and then he was the first person to write, like, to my knowledge, the first person to write a leadership book. And now there's also, to my knowledge, over 200,000 leadership books out there. Yeah. So he kind of shifted the paradigm between management and leadership. And he's written over 70 books to this point. He writes like 2 books a year. The guy's a madman.
He's still with us.
He's still with us. And he's amazing. Check him out. If you don't know who he is, check him out. And one of the things that I learned from him, and it's such a great principle, and it's something that you embody, even though you don't study John, it's something that you just embody with everything you just said. And you said, leadership. In order for you to lead somebody, what is the first thing that you need to do?
Yeah, be able to lead yourself.
Lead yourself. But when it comes to the client, what's the first thing you need to do?
You got to understand who you're talking to.
Bingo. Because in order to lead somebody, first, you have to find them. And I'm also a firm believer of the ideology that sales is leadership. Because leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. Sales is the same thing. And so, I teach a role play class, and one of the first principles that I teach is you have to find them. It's kind of like for you to come here to shoot this podcast today from your house. You type in the address in your GPS. From your house, is it going to take you here? Okay. Sure. So what if you use those same exact directions? Go 1/4 mile down, turn left, drive 3 miles this way, turn right. Those same exact directions that took you from your home to here. If you plug in those same exact directions, but you were over in the Dr. Phillips area, would that take you here?
Oh, it's going to be a completely different destination.
Well, why not?
Because I started somewhere different.
And that, I think, is the biggest flaw that leaders have and salespeople have, is they try to use a pre-recorded script or a pre-rehearsed script. Yeah. And they just try to take people down this linear path. But leadership, sales, none of that is linear. You have to find them where they are so that you can take them to where they need to go, because the directions change based on their starting point at the destination of where they want to go.
Holy shit, what about that? I love that. That's good. It's really good. I did not know about Maxwell, but I can almost guarantee that most of the people that I listen to, like Tony Robbins, Andy Frisella, all these other leaders in their fields, I'm sure they have heard and learned from them, because that's exactly what they all talk about. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go home and get some Amazon.
You know what's crazy? Actually, I have a signed book by him.
Wow.
Yeah, I have one. I'm gonna give it to you.
Nah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to you. The 5 levels of leadership. Yeah.
That's so nice. I'll give it back when I'm done with it.
Sure, I accept. I accept. But I know that it's a book that, because it was given to me, and it was meaningful for me to receive it, and I want to be able to give the gift that was given to me. And so you don't have to give it back to me. You can just give it to somebody else who will probably find value in it. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
I love that.
So yeah, man. John Maxwell. You know what's funny? When I went into the coaching space, you talk about everybody, all of these influencers all learn from the same people. That was the biggest revelation that I had when I went into coaching, is that everybody is all learning the same things. They just have a different way of communicating. So when I started going into the high ticket coaching space, one of the big challenges that I had is, man, well, what could I do that's different than what everybody else is doing? Because there's already, and I coached realtors. Everybody, like, how many real estate coaches are there?
Right.
There's so many, and so many that are way more known than I am. And you come to realize everybody all teach the same thing. They just have different spins on it, different processes. But similar to this podcast, there's going to be podcasts out there of other experts teaching the same things, talking about the same things. But the power that you have in your communication is that you have a person that's meant to hear your message. And if you can really dial into that person, and anytime you create content like this or you're coaching, you're serving this one person, this avatar.
Yeah.
That person will resonate more with your content than these other people. And that was a big revelation for me, because, I mean, when you start learning marketing, the path that most people take is they go through Russell Brunson. They start with, ClickFunnels. And then it's like, man, you go to these conferences, you got 5,000 people in the room. Everybody's learning the same thing, but everybody's selling different products.
I mean, I see that too. Like, that was one of the main things that I kind of struggled with in myself before I started doing all this stuff, was how am I going to be different? So I prayed about it. I was just doing my morning walk, and it just kind of came to me. I was like, I don't know if it was, divine intervention. I don't know if you believe in any of that stuff, but it just felt like God himself, the universe, was speaking to me. It wasn't words. It just was like a little download, and I just saw it, and I looked at it, and I got it immediately. And the message was, it's not about you. And I saw that same week on another movie that I love, and I watched it many times before, but I watched it again for some reason because it was just there. Doctor Strange. In that movie, at the end, he's talking to the Sorcerer Supreme, and she tells him, after the whole thing that's happened, and once he's like at that crossroads of like, what do I do? She tells him it's not about him. And I think that's a thing that completely shifted everything for me, where I started to understand, like, okay, it's not about me. I can't think about it in the framework of like, how am I going to be able to do this for someone? How am I going to be able to help you? No, it's whatever is supposed to happen. Whoever's supposed to find this content, find me as a realtor, find me as a resource, as a friend. It's because they need it. And I got that so clear that morning. So as soon as I understood that, it was like, it's absolutely nothing that's going to get in my way of getting all the stuff that I would need to be doing so that can happen for everybody that needs it, because it's not about me. So that, I think that was one of the main things that completely shattered this idea, preconceived notion that I had of like, how am I going to differentiate myself? Like, no, I don't need to differentiate myself. I'm already myself.
Which is different.
So, so it's not about me. Go from a place of service, and just keep moving.
I love that, man. You said a few things there. I think the biggest thing is, it's not about you. There's a lot of people that, we talk to on a regular basis, and, the last time I did any speaking gig, somebody's like, well, I want to learn how to do what you just did. I was like, well, do you do any speaking? It's like, well, no, but I want to. I'm like, well, what's stopping you? Well, when I get up there, I just, I start stuttering, I get nervous. And one of the another big revelation that I had was when you're focused on what you look like, what you sound like, what people think of you, it's debilitating. There is a lot of anxiety that comes from that, and that's when your palms are sweating, you're shallow breathing, you're talking faster than you normally talk. It's because you're thinking about, like, if we're on this podcast, but we're so self-conscious of what people are thinking of while we're on this podcast, we'd be crippled. We wouldn't be able to do a good job or an effective job to any degree. But because it's not about us, you can make it about the people. You can serve them at a much higher level. So that was cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought it was gold when I got it. I was just like, I don't know where this is coming from, but this was it. This is what I needed. It did it for me. So
Love it.
every single chance I get to kind of put that little seed in somebody else, because I see it a lot, especially with some of the newer agents in the office. I'm like, let me try and circumvent all this other stuff that you're probably going to go through, because I've already gone through it. And I give you this little thing, whether it takes or not. That's on you now, but I can do my part and try and, I guess, save you a little bit of anguish.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's another good take right there. It's like you're giving it to them, but it's up to them to whether or not they take it.
Yeah.
And if you're so attached to outcomes for other people's lives, that's another thing that they do.
Yeah.
And I think the same goes true when we're helping people buy homes on orphanages, right? Like, here's the plan that you have. If you don't qualify for any reason right now, you have a concrete plan. Follow these steps.
Yeah.
And if 6 months go by, you did nothing that's on that plan, then that seed didn't take.
It's 100%. We can lead the horse to the water thing, right?
There you go.
Make it right. Let's say somebody has a less than ideal credit score. Maybe they're in the high fives, and they want to get into like the mid high sixes, 600s, but they don't really know how to do that. Like, credit score is highly important. It's not the most important thing, but it's highly important for you to be able to qualify. Yeah. What are things that they can do right now if they have debt? Let's say they have credit card debt, student loans, and they have a personal loan. Maybe they don't have a car. They already paid their car off, but they have those three things. They have high balances on the credit card. So what are things that they can do so they can utilize this time effectively? So come the election or come whatever may come after the election, they're ready to make that move without having the credit score be an actual issue.
So I would say the first thing that somebody needs to do if they feel credit's an issue is to actually have their credit looked at.
Okay.
Because you'd be surprised how quickly sometimes things change. Sometimes it's something that can't be changed quickly, but you never know until you actually take a look at the credit. And so now there's technology out there. We have the magic rescore system where we can take somebody's credit, we can plug it in right into the credit bureaus, and then once we pull their credit, the system notifies us, hey, you have 47 points on Experian, you can bump it by. You have 60 points, you can bump it on Equifax. You can bump it by 30 points on TransUnion. We may not need all the points for all of them. A lot of the times it's like, to get their score up to 47 points, that may require $10,000. But you know what? Maybe we only need 30 points. They get that 30 points, it may only cost $1,800. We just did a deal right now with Jasmine in her office. The client, she had a 597 score. We did the rescore, $1,100 paying off 3 cards. Not even paying it off, paying down the balances to certain increments. $1,100. Her score went to a 643.
Jeez.
And she closed on a month.
And this magic rescore system is free.
It's free to the clients.
Free to your clients.
Free to
right?
the clients. Yes.
All right.
Yes, absolutely. It costs us a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, that's why I always feel as well. Like when we talk about working with a broker, I think one of the other benefits is we only get paid when loans close. So we're not getting paid to draw out your credit repair process. That's why, like, a lot of times I'll see people going through credit repair and they're going through it for 9 months. They're paying $300 a month. I'm like, well, has your score improved? They're like, well, I don't know. And we take a look at it, nothing's changed. It's like, this was supposed to be a quick process. Why hasn't it improved yet? A lot of times because they get paid a retainer. They get paid, they're compensated for keeping you on retainer longer. And that's not to say that there's no good credit repair companies out there, because I'm sure there are. But we want to get your score up. From a lending perspective, we want to get your score up as soon as possible because it costs us money to do it, which we're okay with if we can help you close on our own. And so that's the first thing. Have somebody actually take a look at it. If you want to know like kind of strategies people can use and feel be helpful for your clients, I'll share with you the key things you need to do to get your score up. So the first thing is utilization. Okay, credit utilization. This is the credit cards that you have, and let's just say you have a card that has a $10,000 limit on it, and you get a $5,000 balance. The utilization on that is 50%. So a big rule of thumb is you want to keep the balance on your credit cards is about 30% or below of what the credit limit is. That's the first thing. The second thing is don't close any of your accounts. If you have a credit card that you haven't used in a year, buy gas on it one time just so it stays active and keeps it open. Because the longer your accounts are open, the better it is for your credit history. And so another factor that impacts your credit is the average length of time an account stay open. So don't close anything. If you could, just keep them all open forever. And if you have no balances on them, great, but keep them open as long as possible. Because a lot of times when you pay off a balance, people think like, oh, I'll pay off my card. They think that'll help their credit.
It makes it worse.
It makes it worse.
Now you lost that account.
Yes. Yeah. And then now we're talking about paying things off. Yeah. Don't pay collections. Okay. You can't pay it, but before you pay any collections, you want to reach out to the credit bureaus or the creditor, I should say, and you want to get a letter of deletion. Hey, I'm willing to pay this account that is $600 in collections, but I'm only willing to pay it if you give me a letter of deletion stating I'll pay it in full, so we're all whole, but you'll delete this off my credit report. And the reason why is if you just pay a collection in the eyes of the credit bureau, you're admitting that the debt is real and that it was yours and that you're at fault. Doesn't help you at all. In a lot of cases, it could even hurt you. So what you want to do, again, if you want to get that letter of deletion, if you can get accounts deleted, if you have accounts that are like in dispute, things like that, reach out to the creditor and say, hey, can you show me proof that this is my account? And you'd be surprised how often they can't provide the proof. Because a lot of times they're sold, different creditors, and then the paperwork gets lost in the abyss, and then they can't prove it. And if they can't prove it, they have to take it out by law. But if you don't have any kind of documentation, you can't do those things. I mean, if you have a lender such as us, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be us, and you have any documentation stating they should delete these things and they're not deleted after they're paid, we can go straight to the creditors to get those removed for you.
The power of having the right resource. I love that.
That's all it is.
Okay, Noel, this is amazing. I'm glad that you came here. Let's do this again. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about, plug in before we wrap up?
No, I think we hit it all on the head. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
A huge thanks to Will for having this conversation with me. If you got anything from this, please like and subscribe and leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see next. If you'd like to get in contact with Will, all his contact information is going to be in the description of this video.